Hello. Thank you for being here. We're glad you joined us. I want to give you some insights today that we've gained over the past 25 years on women in Europe under a religious governing system, the Roman Church state. First, I want to acknowledge that it's important to respect others' beliefs. But when religion denies rights to women, this is no longer just a belief system. It can become a feudalistic master-servant system that cuts off women and children and funnels family money to the church instead. This is exactly what happened in Europe under the Roman Catholic imperial church state. And it can happen here too. I'm not trying to dissuade anyone from their beliefs. My only purpose here is to keep women and children from suffering the same fate as our European ancestors. I want to sound an alarm that keeps intolerance and male-only exclusivity from ruling us now the way it ruled Christian Europe. The Christian nationalist movement is trying to make Christianity the national religion in the U.S. By comparing Europe as it was before and after the Christian conquest, we can see how Christianization has been carried out. Forewarned is forearmed, as the saying goes. It's difficult to think about atrocities in the past, but we need forearming to repel the same woes that harmed our relatives. There are flashing signals all over Europe from Christianity's conversion by the sword campaign. Signs of brutality to people and land are still visible in places attacked and occupied by the Christian church state, especially in places targeted by medieval crusades in southern France and the Baltics. Today, the gun may replace the sword, but the playbook for military invasion and occupation is still very much in use. Even now, brutality and deceit prevail. Locals are killed or enslaved, women are raped, and children are separated from parents. The European church-state empire employed these tactics for centuries. Thousands upon thousands of women died. Massive numbers of local populations either fled or were displaced. Sanctuaries were attacked. And now we see imperialism rising again in Europe and the U.S. Putin invaded Ukraine and has been killing locals, raping women, and separating children from parents. Untold numbers of parents were separated from their children at the Mexican border in the U.S. under the first Trump regime. And 6 years later, 1,400 children remain separated from their parents. American women have died preventable deaths as a result of the U.S. Supreme Court decision that took away health care rights from women when the court reversed Roe v. Wade. The court now consists predominantly of Roman Catholics due to the legislators' procedural maneuvers that look unlawful to me. In Europe, the church state took away women's rights to own and inherit property, and church heresy laws resulted in the burning of untold thousands of women at the stake as witches. When men speak of witch hunts, it strikes me as the height of cynicism, since the all-male leadership was responsible for these atrocities to women. Just consider what effect the Christian conquest had on personal freedom and land ownership in Europe. Before the Christian conquest, Europe was an open system of interconnected family domains. Under the Christian Empire, the continent was divided into myriad countries, and women were hunted as witches for hundreds of years. The church became the primary property holder while its military occupied the whole of Europe, all of which caused secular rulers to set up an elaborate defensive system of refuge castles and fortified abbeys and towns. Family domains were overtaken by the empire. The church state turned secular duchies into kingdoms. Burgundy was the last duchy to be conquered. All lands and people living on those lands became property of the imperial crown, the church state. Before the Christian conquest, family defined the culture. After the conquest, the Christian church called itself family, but removed the main pillar of family structure, namely the wife and mother. Calling itself the bride, the church enacted celibacy laws that redirected inheritance from the family to the church. The mother is noticeably absent from the Father-Son family of Christian deities. The Father, Son, Holy Ghost Trinity departs sharply from the traditional Mother, Father, Son scene at the manger. The priest became the pretend father, celibate and childless, and turned the meaning of the word on its head. The mother, biological bearer of children and gateway to future generations, was shut out of the family, rendered subservient, and massacred by the thousands. Christianity has wrought something very wrong upon women. From the edict giver at the top, to the officials who pronounced the death sentences, to the hooded executioners who lit the fire, all have committed unspeakable horrors under the banner of Christianity. They have fueled the war on their own life-giving women by inflicting brutality and public torture and death. I grew up in a Christian church and was very confused by it. Mary's the mother, but she's a virgin. Christians are told to pray to God the Father, but it was Father Joseph who accompanied Mary to pay their taxes. The Christian Holy Family is usually depicted as Mary, Joseph, and Christ, but isn't Christ supposed to be the Son of God? Why isn't the Holy Trinity the same as the Holy Family? Let me suggest that there's a very good reason for this confusion. When Christians converted Europe's gathering halls from secular to religious, they worked to erase the women's role. Many of the heroes honored in those halls were women, and it was impossible to remove all the tributes to them. The homage to women had to be explained away as something else. The solution? Recast the pre-Christian women warriors as a new category that was neither human nor God, but saint. That's why so much statuary of women in the oldest Christian churches are holding swords, because they were warriors against the Christian conquest in a pre-Christian world that honored them for it. There are no Christian women warriors because all the church-state soldiers were male only. So that's why the Christian family of deities is explained in inconsistent ways. The Christians need to explain away the warrior women who fought for their freedom, because once Christianity ruled, women became slaves, men's possessions to be bought and sold. It's been our experience that traces of pre-Christian Europe are preserved where resistance to the Christian church state has been the strongest, and that's where women are still revered. What other proof do we have of Christianity's animus toward women? Statues of women have been removed, beheaded, defaced, and changed into men. And they're all over Europe. Let me point to a few. The winged victory of Samothrace, beheaded and thrown into the lake at the island sanctuary. Statuaries of women flanking a door on Laon Cathedral. At Laon, for example, figures of women have been defaced, their faces literally chiseled off, while the figures of men remain untouched. There is an arrow through the neck and fire at the feet of the dancing woman in Pavia Cathedral. Judging from the widespread nature of this specialized vandalism, Christian conquerors seem bent on erasing all traces of women heroes in the past and redefining family according to the Roman feudalistic model, as men with their concubines and slaves, rather than the mother-father-children model. Our conclusion is that the Roman religious system collaborated with the Roman military system to debase women into mere vessels for men as part of the Christian conquest. Whether they were Caesar's soldiers or crusading monks, Roman soldiers raped and enslaved women. We see that same Roman playbook in Ukraine, wielded by a male supremacist. Even in the U.S., the denial of women's rights is rampant. The Supreme Court Dobbs decision that revoked women's abortion rights has resulted in many preventable deaths of women and children. This is a religious, misogynistic view of a few imposed on the many. It's part of a culture of male dominance over women. Remember that before Christianity, there was no sin or hell. Let me repeat that because it's huge. Before Christianity, there was no sin or hell. Before Christianity, women were not considered sinners, and there was no religious justification for punishing women. Pre-Christians honored women for their fact-based, biologic, and defensive capabilities. It was only after the advent of Christianity that women were expelled from secular abbeys, hunted as witches, and burned at the stake under Roman laws. Since pre-Christian times, women have championed freedom. They grasp the torch of liberty. They hold the scale of justice. More than 1,000 years ago, women in power were freeing slaves, and women warriors were battling Roman invaders, even as Roman church law enforced slavery in Europe. In conclusion, confronting the effects of Christian rule can enable us to make informed governing choices. Here are some ideas for determining good governance for all the people. Is government legitimate if it holds power by brutality and fear? Do Christians rule for the common good or to please their authoritarian male masters? How do women, children, and family fare under a male-dominated, master-servant, feudalistic Christian empire that has massacred millions and put a bounty on the heads of women in the past? This approach can allow us to tell the difference between fact and fiction, and to choose a just and equitable system of governance for all, not just a few favored Christian men. Why should rulers rely on science rather than myth and legend? Truth and honesty rely on facts, and the electorate needs facts to make serious, informed choices that can benefit all people. Let's keep intolerance and exclusivity from ruling us the way it ruled Europe and the church state. And to do that, we need to keep church and state separate. To keep church and state separate, we need to know the difference between religious and secular rule. To know the difference between religious and secular, we need to take heed of the horrors Christianity wreaked on Europe and keep that from happening again. Thank you so much. I really appreciate